SQL Server has a bunch of built-in security roles that we can take advantage of to secure our server, secure our data, spread out some of the administrative overhead. So there's a lot of advantages or reasons to take advantage of this. Let's start by looking at the security roles that we have. So security is going to exist in two places. So we're going to have instance level security, and that we're going to find here. I'm in SSMS. We're going to find the machine that I'm connected to, and then security. And if I expand that and server roles, these are all going to be roles that I can assign to people to help ease some of the administrative burden. Right? So I can give them these permissions, don't have to make them a full sysadmin, but give them this level of permissions. And there's a bunch of them that are predefined here, and I can create my own too. So I can right click, create a new server role here as well. We'll look at that in another video. So these are all roles that deal with managing the server itself. Now I also have roles within my database. So if I go to database and I'm going to expand my AdventureWorks database, and if I come down here, I'm going to have security here as well. And you're going to see we have roles here also. And here are database roles, and these are again a bunch of predefined roles that I can give to people. Now, these impact only this particular database, not the system as a whole. So if I make somebody a DB owner, they own this database, not every database. If I make them a DB data reader, then they can read the data in this database, not every database. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, let's talk about how we can use these to manage access to our system. So in order for the role to function, I also need to have a login. And I'm using a integrated authentication system where I'm using Windows Server accounts, or in this case, Active Directory accounts, to give access to my SQL Server. So let's say I wanted to take somebody and I wanted to make them, let me expand server roles here. I wanted to make them, let's say, a disk administrator, so they can handle that part of my administration. So here's what I would do. I would come back to Server Manager and open up Active Directory users and computers. And I'm going to create a new user. Let me expand my database here. I'm going to right click on users and I'm going to create a new user. And I'm going to name this user, let's do Pedro Ramirez. And we're going to do P. Ramirez. And then I'm going to set a password. And in this case, I'm not going to log into this account in this video, but I might later on. So I'm going to uncheck user must change password at next logon. Now, that creates my user. Now, if I want this user to be able to log into this server directly, then I'm going to have to make this user a server operator. Here's how I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to users and I'm going to find Pedro. Where did you go? There you are. Here's Pedro, and I'm going to say he's a member of, and I'm going to add him to server operators. Check just to make sure I spelled it correctly. Yep. Okay, now Pedro is a member of the server operators group. That means he can log into the server interactively. But we still haven't given him access to this role, disk admin, here in SQL. So before I can give him access to a role, I need to create him as a new login. So I'm going to right click under security. And again, I'm not under databases because this is going to be for the database. This is going to be for the instance. I'm going to create a new login. Now I can create new logins here that can be used in databases as well. In fact, that's probably the easier way to do it. There is another way to do it. But there's a few more security implications. So for login name, I can use Windows authentication, Entra authentication, or create my own SQL server. Well, I'm on a domain, so I'm going to use domain. And I'm going to click search, and I'm going to search for Pedro. And I could do this if I wanted to with a group as well. So I'm going to click OK. We're going to create for Pedro. We're not mapping by certificate or asymmetric key or anything like that. Under server roles, I can say I want him to be a disk admin. User mapping is to map them to a specific database. I don't need that at this point. Securables are things that can be secured. We're going to look at some of these in a subsequent video. And then status, do we want a permission to connect to the database engine? We're going to grant that, and we're going to enable a login. And so I hit OK, and that creates my login for Pedro Ramirez. Now, before I close this, I want you to see that we can come in here and we can open up Pedro Ramirez, and we can come in here and add more roles to Pedro later on. But if we look at securables, some of this has been granted access already. So you see on the server name, so the securable here is going to be the server. Type server, we scroll down and we're going to see that connect to SQL has been granted. Now, just to show you the difference, and I can add additional things here by choosing grant. And we've got 3 columns here: grant, with grant, and deny. So grant means I'm going to give him this access. Deny means I'm going to take this access away. Now, key thing here, just like with anything, if you don't have to deny permissions, don't. It makes your life harder. If you just don't grant, then they don't have them. So the reason you would use the deny is, let's say I had Pedro as part of 2 separate groups, or even just in a group that granted him permission for something, and I did not want it on a particular object. That's where I would use the deny. But best practice, don't use denies if you don't have to. Now the other column here is with grant. With grant means I'm giving you the permission, and then I'm giving you permission to give it to somebody else as well. So grant says I'm giving you permission, but you don't have the right to share it with anybody else. With grant says, yes, you do have the right to share that with anybody else. So that's the difference between those two. Now, the other thing I want you to see here, these are explicit permissions. Let's take a look at effective permissions. So we can connect to SQL. We see that one explicit right here. But notice we've got 2 other permissions here: alter resources and view any database. I didn't give Pedro those permissions. Those permissions came with the role. So I added him to that role. We gave him permission to connect, and he has these effective permissions. Okay, so that's how we're going to use these built-in security groups. Create a user if you're doing Windows authentication, then create a user in Active Directory or in your Windows server if it's a standalone server, and then create a login, and then make that login a member of that role. And if you're thinking about roles, think about them kind of like Windows security built-in groups, where we've given permissions. A role is kind of similar to a group in that regard. We use them to group permissions so we don't have to do them all manually. Okay, there we go. We have looked at how to use a existing security group in SQL Server.